Good evening, folks. My name is Terry Cheshire. I'm the principal here at Park Place. I want to say thank you for you to show up tonight. On the panel with me is Ms. Hilson. She is the 8th grade administrator this year, and Mr. Garrison is the 7th grade administrator this year. I want to thank you for taking your time to come in tonight. I hear we have a bunch of families out of power because of all the wind, but we really appreciate you coming in. Christy, you want to go back one slide, I think, please?
Yeah, thank you.
With the introductions, I've already gone through those, but we want to let you know we are recording the webinar tonight. If you do not want to be part of that recording, we're going to ask you to exit right now, so then you're not going to be part of that. Ms. Hilson will be starting that recording very shortly for you. So go ahead, Ms. Hilson.
All right, we're good to go.
On our agenda for this evening, we tried to take the feedback we got from parents and we tried to break it down into 3 areas that we thought would address many of the concerns that parents expressed or the questions they expressed in the feedback we received. We want to give you a first month update, what's gone well, where our successes have been. We want to also give parents information how you can best help your students, because we know that we're hearing that we have a large number of kids that are struggling a little bit and having a hard time figuring out the different systems, the different formats, the way teachers are formatting their Canvas page. So we'd like to give you a little bit of information about that. And then we're going to talk about information the counselors like to share about things that they're doing and give an introduction to our counselors. So that's our plan for the evening. If we have time at the very end, we will be going through the question and answers. And we'll be looking at those, and Ms. Hilson will kind of let us know what questions are out there, and we will try to respond to the questions that folks are asking in the question and answer session. So we'll move along. Mr. Garrison.
Yeah, well, good evening, and again, thank you so much for joining us this evening and taking the time to be with us. So a few things with our, now that we're probably about 5 weeks or so into the school year, if we want to take a look at some of the pluses that we've experienced, as well as some of the challenges that we've discovered and are continuing to discover and are trying to address. So some of the successes that we've had is that our attendance with our classes have been really good, surprisingly. You know, averaging around 90% attendance, arguably even better than what we would have on a regular day with school in session and students coming into the building and being physically here. The attendance has been really quite good, and that's been a real positive. A bit of a surprise, knowing all the challenges that families face and what some of the students are having to manage and deal with, but it's been excellent. The teachers have really found that when they are actually engaging with their students in class, asking questions, getting responses, interacting, it is the highlight of their day. It is something that they truly are enjoying. Then, of course, teachers by nature are probably very social as well. That's why they chose the profession they did. And they enjoy students and they enjoy being around students. So having that interaction has been just a real plus for them. We went through the experience of getting the materials and supplies out to everyone. That by itself was probably not a pleasant experience for most, but it ultimately was successful. And we do have supplies, materials, textbooks in the hands of students now. And we have a regular flow of books that are being checked out of the library. And Mr. Ingersoll, when he's emailed by a student or a family, he responds very promptly, and we get those books distributed often that same day. But that has been working well too. The schedule has been established, and at this point, students are certainly well aware and comfortable with it. They know that Monday and Wednesday it's periods 1, 2, and 3, and on Tuesdays and Thursdays it's periods 4, 5, and 6. And they know when Puma time is, and they also know that there is opportunities after lunch for accessing their teacher and getting the help that they need. We've put into place the social and emotional learning piece that our counselors have kind of put together. They've put lessons together and distributed that with our staff so that during Puma time on Mondays, there is a social emotional type lesson and reflection for students to look at, discuss, think about, reflect on. And then Wednesdays are set aside for kind of circling up the class. This is during the Puma time, which is just after third period, giving those students an opportunity to kind of provide input and reflection on a particular question, but again, focusing on their social and emotional health, which is extremely important during this time of the pandemic. So, next slide, please. So, after, we're about 5 weeks in, some of the things that we have discovered that are a bit of a challenge and things that we're working on to try and improve upon. Like I said, students are really good about attending class, but they're not very good in, accessing that teacher access time in the afternoons where teachers are providing specific, almost one-on-one instruction with the kids to give them help. Teachers will invite students. They will have verbal conversation with them. Please come at 1:45 or at 1:50 or 2 o'clock today or at 2:30 today and meet with me and I will help you with your math or I will help you with your science. And the students don't show. Now we do have a few, and the interesting thing is that for the few students that have taken advantage of this, they have experienced a lot of success. And the problems that they're having typically get sorted out and the questions get answered and the assignments get completed and turned in. So I've heard that from numerous teachers, but it's a very, very small percentage of students that are actually taking advantage of this time, which is, excuse me, typically 1:50 to 3 o'clock every day, Monday through Friday. But that's also can be done by appointment at different times that are arranged with the teacher. But anyways, that's something that we need to continue to work on and need help and need the help of parents as well to encourage students to take advantage of that teacher access time. So, and that kind of flows into the next bullet point with students turning in work. And it's not, there's a lot of students that have done perfect, that have done great in getting assignments in. The few students that are taking advantage of teacher access time, they're getting work understood and then turned in, and that's great. But we have a lot of students, all 3 grade levels that are attending class, but do not engage with the teacher during class and then are not getting work turned in. And they may not understand things, but they're not seeking help. So that is something that we want to really try and turn about. We went through our iReady diagnostic testing the week of the 21st, the week of September 21st, we worked on the ELA iReady, and then the week of September 28th, we worked on the math. And that whole diagnostic process is now completed. We didn't have all the students finish the diagnostic, although the majority of them did. But we now, after the diagnostic, we want students to be working on 45 minutes a week in both math and in reading. And we have a lot of students that so far haven't really done that. So we've set aside the time each day for from 12:20 to 12:50. And on Mondays and Wednesdays, it's pretty much geared for math. And then Tuesdays and Thursdays, it's geared for iReady reading. But if you were to do math on a Tuesday, or if you were to do reading on a Monday, no one would be unhappy or upset with you. I mean, it would be okay. But using that 12:20 to 12:50 time throughout the week to try and get those 45 minutes in for each math and reading would be great. And that's something that we need to work on there. A number of our students, not many, but there's a small number of our students that are still having issues with internet access and having a reliable opportunity for students to access the internet. And we're working on that. And there's a couple of angles that we're trying to use to get all of the students in having internet access, which is extremely important during this time. Our ASB is now, the officers haven't been elected yet, but all of the representatives and classes have been elected, and then from them, officers will be chosen. So ASB is getting really close to being totally up and running. Our Puma Pride group is our leadership class, and they are now meeting weekly, as well as our improv club. And these are meeting at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Improv is on Mondays at 3 o'clock, and they'd certainly encourage and love other students to join them. It is a theater group, and you do improv. There's a lot of just improvisational type, interpreting of a circumstance or a situation. It's a lot of fun, and the kids that are involved with it really enjoy it. So that's going, every Monday now. So I'd encourage students to do that if they need a little more social engagement in their lives. The student active engagement during class time is a bit flat, and we want to try and really encourage students to ask questions, to answer questions that teachers pose. One of the things that's frustrating for teachers is when they pose a question to the class and it's just dead silence. And they love it when kids get engaged with a discussion or a question or an activity in class. So something that we're really, encouraging to increase. We need to get that going. And the other piece, and we know it's frustrating for you, the parents, is our whole presentation with Canvas and looking at a teacher's homepage. You might be looking at, depending upon what teacher you're looking at, you might be looking at 2 or 3 different types of formats, which can be confusing, can be certainly overwhelming, and you're already tired, having perhaps worked a long day or just dealing with all that you have on your plate these days. And so what we want to do is try and clean that up and make the staff, the teachers, Canvas page to be more consistent amongst themselves, so that it's easier for you to navigate and easier for you to get to where you need to get information to help your child, and that you can feel good about the educational process that's going on. So those are all things that we're kind of working on here as we're getting into the school year and recognizing that there's some things yet that need some attention. So that's our update at this point. some of the feedback that we've gotten from kids, and here's an interesting assortment here, a potpourri of different things that that students have responded with, but kind of sharing that with you. Some interesting ones, and this one really struck out to me because you wouldn't expect it. But, you know, I asked for help. I'm afraid about going back into the classroom because honestly, in the classroom, I just sit there and not say anything. But there's a little more interaction that's going on, ironically, with the Zoom classes that are happening. You know, 3 classes per day, you can focus more on just those classes. Have a little bit of fun while learning. And that's a suggestion one of the students has given. It's a bit weird, but I can talk to my teachers better, which is, again, kind of ironic. You wouldn't expect that. But for some kids, this has worked out really well. And then a lot of comments about eating in class. I can eat during class, that sort of thing. I like that my parents can help me with my work now. And then, you know, I feel okay with distance learning. I like that we get 3 classes a day, so then we can get the rest of the time to work on those classes and assignments that we get assigned that particular day. So, yeah, as you can see, some interesting comments here from the kids when we ask them for some feedback, just kind of random feedback, and here you go. So thank you very much.
Mr. Cheshire, do you want to make that suggestion, or do you want to?
Be glad to. Folks, with the with a small number of people we have here, we were thinking about opening this up where it's more interactive and unmuting. So at this time, I think Ms. Hilson's going to do that. We will do part of the presentation, and if you have questions, when you get a pause, please ask the question live.
All righty. Hi. Thanks again for being here. So one of the things that I'm going to briefly talk through, because I think, you know, I don't know. I want to make sure that we're honoring concerns and questions that you have. So just please let us know. But one of the things that we sent out a couple times through our newsletter and so forth was asking for feedback to make these webinars worth your time. So we plan to hold them monthly with the exception of probably December. And so we have one scheduled in November. But we also want to make sure that the things that we bring to you are things that you want to know about. So we got a lot of feedback, and Mr. Garrison alluded to a lot of it, the things that we're working on, that we've gotten feedback from parents, feedback from students, feedback from staff, is kind of this idea around remote learning, and especially for our 6th grade students and parents who not only are transitioning to a new building with 6 teachers and a new culture, but also trying to navigate this remote learning environment in a way that's very different. Our current 7th and 8th graders, while this fall looks and feels very different, had kind of a trial run through the spring that we tried to take some of the things that worked well. So when we look at remote learning, what we're hoping, and we just want to guide you back to, because there's an enormous amount of resources on the Monroe School District website, particularly the how-to guides on Zoom and on Canvas and on Skyward. So all those how-to guides are incredibly well done, and hopefully make sense to you. There's also a helpline there. Mr. Garrison mentioned Canvas. So Canvas is our learning management system, or LMS, which essentially means that is where students go to access instruction through their Zoom links on there, as well as their modules, which host their assignments and notes and information. Canvas is also the place where students have to go to submit their work, their evidence of learning. And so that is the primary resource that you as parents in supporting your students to sit down beside them to access. The other piece that's really kind of that's a pretty important piece for parents is what's called Skyward, and that can also be an app on your phone, or you can access it through a URL link. And the difference being is that Skyward is our grade reporting system as well as our attendance reporting system that gets then submitted as evidence that we're keeping track of those things. So in an ideal world, the Canvas, the grades and the feedback that you see in Canvas will match what's happening in Skyward. There have been some glitches in that area, and so staff are really working hard to make sure those mesh. There's some things that have to happen to make that happen, which we're all learning about. The good news is that we're all only on Canvas. Last spring, some of us were on Google Classroom, some of us were in Canvas. That was even trickier to try and navigate. The work in progress that Mr. Garrison talked about and consistency with how Canvas looks is our next steps. One of the things as a Canvas, as a parent, a guardian, a grown-up in charge of one of our students, you have the ability to go in and be an observer on that Canvas course. Those how-to guides will show you how to do that. I highly recommend that. Talking to staff, we do not have a lot of families that are right now listed as observers. Some of the things that are just key feedback from students as well as staff. One of the things that if you are in Canvas and you're looking at, for example, the calendar. So one of the things that we've asked our staff to do is that with every assignment, quiz or a project or test or anything that shows evidence of learning, we ask our staff to put down a due date. Those due dates may change as things happen and evolve during class time, but those due dates should show up on calendars. And if your student clicks on what's called Agenda View at the top of the calendar, it's at the top part, and it says Agenda View, it then creates a list. Now, that can be overwhelming, especially if you are, well, I guess any middle schooler. They might see an entire list of things that are coming up. And one of the best things that you can help support your student is, what can you do right now? What can you control right now to do something? We are 5 weeks into this term school. And one of the things that we are already seeing with students is that students have not submitted their assignments, that starts getting translated into a grade, and those grades would be Fs, which especially for our 6th grade students, sometimes it's a little bit shocking to see that. Please work with your student, the teacher, to say, what can we do right now to start submitting? Our staff is excellent in problem solving with you. The bottom of the slide mentions about the 24-hour turnaround. How can the student advocate for themselves? So if you have your student telling you, I don't know what to do, a great thing as a parent is to say, hey, let's email your teacher and find out what to do. Or better yet, hey, let's have you join teacher access time at 1:50 to get those questions answered for yourself. Managing a schedule like this is very difficult for most middle schoolers on a great day. There's a lot to keep track of. And so working with, depending on where your student is at, developmentally, it might be setting an alarm to be able to jump in and do their iReady. It might be setting an alarm to go back to teacher access time. It might be creating some sort of feedback to your student that when they do something that's successful and that's worked out really well, is to really celebrate that. Sometimes we as parents get kind of hung up on like, oh my gosh, there's a missing assignment or there's an F, and we don't celebrate the things that are working well for our kids. It's kind of a human nature, human parent thing. And so if there are questions, teacher access time, number 1. And number 2, have the student email the teacher. Our expectation is that staff follow up with either emails or phone calls within 24 hours. If you find that there is no response coming back, please contact your grade level administrator and we'll help navigate that process and figure out what's happening. All right, the next step on here was just to kind of mention that Skyward app again. There's 2 different apps. Canvas is one, Skyward is another. Skyward is where you would go for grade reporting, notification of missing assignments. Attendance reporting happens in there. If you know that your student will not be in school, you can actually go in and put in an absence. And you can also email staff right through that. It's great, just as email staff, and you just click on that. There's notifications also you can get in there that you can receive notifications for missing assignments or absences and things. Once we are in the building at some point, you can also check food balances, food service balances, which is also a great tip. You know, oftentimes, we don't oftentimes celebrate the positive comments that we get from parents because we're responding to things that are more of a concern basis, but we've actually gotten some positive feedback too, which is actually, and sharing that with staff, it goes a long ways. Just like Mr. Cheshire mentioned, or maybe it was Mr. Garrison, somebody mentioned about just starting to get overwhelmed, and us as the adults, our kids are also feeling overwhelmed, our staff are feeling overwhelmed. However, even despite that, we've got a lot of successes that are still happening, and those are the things that we also want to highlight and capitalize on. So again, just some feedback that some of the staff is trying to ask students. These particular pieces of feedback came from 8th graders. And our staff, as they work with students, were soliciting anecdotal data as well as grade data to make sure that we're responding to kids as we move along as well. So our next topic here is back to Mr. Cheshire and chatting it up about our awesome counseling staff. So,
Ms. Hilson, just so you know that none of the attendees are unmuted. I don't know what happened. I tried to do that and I wasn't able to do it. So we'd like to share some information about our counselors because we have 2 ladies that do an amazing job. And we'd like to share some of the information about what their jobs and how they're helping to support kids in this remote learning. Ms. Hilson, you want to go to the next slide? These are our 2 counselors. On the left-hand side of your screen is Mrs. Garcia, and on the right-hand side is Miss Liel Zimmerman. And at this point, they created a video to kind of introduce themselves and give you a little bit of overview, so we'll show that to you right now.
My name is Jennifer Garcia. I'm one of the counselors here at Park Place Middle School. Students on my caseload are students with the last names that begin with I through Z. Those are in the PBS program or the SLC program.
Hi, my name is Elsa Leal Zimmerman, and students on my caseload are students with last names A through H, all the ELL students, and students with families who speak Spanish only. Some of the things that we can help with is we coordinate parent-teacher meetings, we provide academic support, social and emotional support, and career exploration to students. We also help connect families with resources.
October is anti-bullying month. So some of the things we've been working on is providing social emotional lessons to teachers on bullying and how to report it. Since we're in a virtual environment, students will now have access to a counseling page at campus with resources, as well as access to lunch groups and groups on rotating topics such as stress, anxiety, organization, and how to address all of them.
So please do not hesitate to reach out to us. The best way to reach us is by calling the office directly or by emailing us. Go Pumas!
And that gives you a brief overview of our 2 counselors and some of the things they're working on. We'll talk a little bit more about those on the next slide. The counselors ran a needs assessment survey early in the fall here, and they tried to identify areas that the students needed some extra support. What the students were feeling positive about is they can get the help they need. 84% of our students said if they need some help, they know who to get a hold of and they have a way to get a hold of them. However, on the other side, connection with adults was one of our lowest areas. And that's something where the kids aren't feeling like they have the connections they really need with adults. So it's a little counter to they have the help. It's just a little bit different on. And then making connection with friends. And I think all of us, whether we're students or adults, feel this making connections and having that social outlet is something that we're lacking with the COVID restrictions we currently have. Go ahead, Ms. Hilson. The counselors mentioned some group activities during lunchtime, and these are going to be rotating activities, and they're identified by the students. So the topic that the counselors will be meeting with the students on during lunchtime will be student generated. Some of the ideas that they're going to start focusing on is study skills and organization. How do I organize myself? How do I make sure that I'm getting all my assignments in? Where do I go in Canvas to look for assignments. So those kind of activities. Anxiousness and sadness. There's a statistic right now that I heard that we're anticipating somewhere in the high 60s of people feeling anxious or anxiety with the current COVID stress crisis we're going through. The statistics even shocking, how many people are feeling PTSD. So they're going to address this with the kids and have conversations with them, give the students the opportunity to talk about that. How do you take care of yourself in this time where you're being isolated? What are some things you can do that make you feel like you have connections with others? How do you prioritize and make sure it's just that you focus in on the things you need to do? So the counselors are going to spend time talking with the students there. And then there's going to be new students to our school that they're going to have new student groups where they meet and get introductions, give the students that opportunity to learn a little bit of our school. Again, these are rotating topics. They will change weekly and they will be student generated. So if your student does not know about this, please let them know about that, and they can just shoot their an email to the counselor and say, this is a topic I'd like you to consider bringing up and talking about. So it's kind of a neat thing, and I think it'll be great for the kids to have. Go ahead, Ms. Hilson. We have some reminders that we want you to be aware of. We do a weekly newsletter every Thursday. We try to pack as much information in that newsletter as we possibly can. Generally, there's an administrator that will write a little bit of an article about some topic that's coming up. The thing, excuse me, the thing we want you to be aware of is we do have conference week coming up on the last week, full week of October, and that's October 26th through the 30th. Our days for counselors would be Tuesday and Thursdays, afternoons and evenings. Our afternoon sessions will begin at 12:30 and go to 3:30. We'll have an hour dinner break for the teachers to get a break and get their dinners done. And then we'll start up again at 4:30 and we'll go to 7 o'clock. So that's coming up on that last week of October. And we're going to have ours on the Tuesday and Thursday afternoon session, and then again followed by evening session. We have principal chat coming up, and that's an opportunity where it's an open forum where the administrators, generally all three of us, show up. We meet with parents, and it's topics that you folks want to ask about. There are times where questions are asked that we don't have the answer at that point, but if we have information about the topics that parents are bringing up, we're more than happy to discuss those at those meetings. And then, like Ms. Hilson said, we're trying to schedule monthly webinars. Our next one will be November 17th. There is, and we put it in our newsletter, a link where if there's topics you'd like us to mention and talk about, we have that. And then we try to design the conversations we have in our webinars from the topics that you provide. So those are all pieces of information I think is real important to you. At this time, we are available to answer questions you have, and you can unmute yourself and just ask the questions you may have.
And we do have a participant who asked the question if parents will be scheduling Zoom meetings with teachers. And the short answer is yes. So there will be 15-minute appointment slots available. There'll be more information coming on that. Students will still attend their regular Zoom sessions that week. So their Zoom sessions are not affected with their synchronous learning time. The only thing that would be affected for students in terms of accessing teachers is that teacher access time will not be available that week. But other opportunities for iReady and independent work time, all those things will remain in place. We'll be sending out a link for families to be able to sign up for those Zoom meetings, and we're in the process of getting all that information to get out to parents.
Any other questions? In teacher training, they always talk about teacher wait time. What's the reasonable amount of time to wait? So this silence, we're doing teacher wait time. Well, not hearing any other questions, I'd like to say thank you for giving us a half an hour of your time where we could go over and share some information. Please, if you find these webinars helpful, if you talk to your friends and share the information. Again, our next one is on November 16th from 6 to 7 p.m. And we'll put the
17th.
link in the newsletter at that time. Ms. Hilson, Mr. Garrison, is there anything you folks would like to say?
Thank you for joining us.
Mr. Garrison, you look like you're in deep thought.
Well, the next webinar will be November 17th. And again, thank you very much for joining us this evening.
Have a great evening, folks.